Thank you, Jackie, and thank you to everyone for attending this workshop today. As Jackie had mentioned, today our workshop is going to be on DPS incentives and programs, getting the most from your bids. And before we go too far into the actual programs and incentives, just want to give a quick overview of the Department of Procurement Services. So DPS is the contracting authority for the city of Chicago, and it's the department responsible for procuring the city's goods and services. We work together as a team with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process. And we do this by establishing, communicating, and enforcing superior business practices. And today we'll go through first the city's different programs, so you know a little background about each of those, and then we'll move on to talking about the different bid incentives that are available on the city's solicitations. So to start, we'll go over the city's 7 programs. Those 7 programs are all on the screen now. Some are available only in our construction related projects. Others are available in non-construction, and some are available in both. So as we go through the overview of each of these programs, I'll also point out what they're available under. And our first program is the Small Business Initiative for Construction. You might know this as the SBI program. And this program is designed to encourage small businesses to participate in city-funded construction projects. This program is available for construction projects that are up to $10 million in total cost. And it is a 2-tiered program. So there is SBI 1 and SBI 2. And you'll know if a solicitation is part of this program because on the cover page of the solicitation, it will indicate either SBI 1 or SBI 2. Regardless of if it's an SBI 1 or an SBI 2 project, everyone who's bidding on it needs to be a small local business and needs to have its principal place of business located in the 6-county region. Additionally, for both SBI 1 and 2, small businesses do need to perform a majority of the work under the contract, and that can either be by performing the work itself as the prime as a small business, or you can also subcontract out work to other small local businesses. But a majority of the work for all SBI project does need to be performed by small businesses. So those requirements all apply to SBI 1 and SBI 2. And then in terms of the differences between the 2 programs, or the 2 tiers of the program, SBI 1 is for the slightly larger construction projects. So this is going to be for projects that have an estimated value of $2 million to $10 million. For this, all bidders cannot exceed 1.5 times the Small Business Administration or SBA size standards and 1.5 times the Certification Personal Net Worth or PNW limits. For SBI 2, this tier is for slightly smaller construction projects. So this can be for any construction projects that are under $2 million in cost. For this, the bidders need to be a little smaller, so they cannot exceed 0.5% of the SBA size standards and 0.5% of the Certification Personal Net Worth limits. Closely related to the SBI program is the Mid-Size Business Initiative for Construction, which you might know as MBI. And this program is designed to increase participation in city-funded construction projects for small and mid-sized businesses. So this program is for construction projects that are between $10 and $20 million in cost. To be eligible for MBI projects, you do need to be either a small or mid-sized local business to bid. Your principal place of business should be located within the 6-county regions. And then the businesses can be a little bigger than they were for SBI. The bidders just need to be not exceeding 2 times the SBA size standards and 2 times the Certification Personal Net Worth limits. And then a majority of the work under these projects also does need to be performed by mid-sized businesses or small local businesses, and that can be either by doing the work yourself as the prime, or you can also subcontract out work to other smaller local mid-sized businesses. The next program is similar to the first two, but is available in non-construction projects, and it is the Non-Construction Mid-Sized Business Initiative, NMBI. And this is designed to increase small and mid-sized business participation in non-construction projects. So this is available in non-construction projects that are estimated to be $3 to $10 million in total costs. So anything that is labeled as an NMBI project can only have bidders who are small and mid-sized local businesses. Their principal place of business needs to be in the 6-county region. And in terms of size standards, the bidders cannot exceed 1.5 times the SBA size standards. And then for these projects as well, a majority of the work, so at least 51%, does need to be performed by mid-sized businesses. And that can be either by having that mid-sized business awarded the contract, perform the work themselves, or their work can also be subcontracted out to other mid-sized local businesses. So the first 3 programs we touched upon were all kind of closely related. Now the next 4 we talk about, each are fairly distinct. So the first of those programs is the Diversity Credit Program. And this program is designed to increase participation of minority business enterprises and women business enterprises in private contracts. And a private contract for purposes of this program is considered to be any contract that is not funded by a government entity. And under this program, you can use participation by MBEs and WBEs in that contract to earn credit for future MBE, WBE goals on city contracts. So to be eligible for this program, you do need to have a private contract, and that contract cannot have affirmative action goals in it. If you meet both of those requirements and you still opt to use either MBEs or WBEs on that contract, and those MBEs or WBEs perform direct commercially useful functions, essentially meaning that they're performing meaningful work under the contract, and those MBEs and WBEs are certified in an area of specialty, you will then qualify for the program. Under the program, you can earn $1 of credit for every $3 that's earned by an MBE or WBE vendor. And if you are awarded the credits when you are bidding on future city contracts, in your bid documents, you'll indicate what credits you have available and that you would like to use them. You can use them for a maximum amount of 5% of the total dollar value of the city contract. And when you're bidding, as long as you have the credits available, you can make the indication that you would like to use them, but ultimately you can only use the credits once. So as soon as you are awarded a contract under which you were indicated you would like to use the credits will be considered used, and then they will expire a year after receiving them. Our next program is the Mentor Protege program, and this program is actually both a city program and a bid incentive. So in this part of the presentation, we'll focus mostly on the program aspect. And then in the next part of the presentation, when we talk about incentives, we'll talk more about what the incentive piece of it means. But the Mentor Protege program is designed to increase participation and capacity of MBEs and WBEs in city contracts by making the use of those MBEs and WBEs available for credit on the contract for those who mentor MBEs and WBEs under their city contract. If you're interested in applying for this program, you do need to apply at the time of bid for it. And you'll want to review the solicitation there'll be an affidavit for the Mentor Protege program. You'll want to complete that affidavit. And then you'll also want to submit a written Mentor Protege agreement. And to know what kind of form that agreement should take, if you go on our DPS website under our rules and regulations section, there's an entire packet just on the Mentor Protege program. And within that packet, there is a sample agreement. We recommend just taking the form from that agreement and essentially filling in your applicable information. The information you'll fill in will describe how you plan to mentor the protege, how often you plan to meet. It'll ask you to describe what specific work you'll have them do, what services you'll offer them. And the reason all this information is provided on the front end is so when the mentor protege agreement is reviewed by the CPO will be able to verify that the agreement is designed to assist the protege to become self-sustaining, competitive, and profitable. And if that does show in the agreement and you're deemed eligible for the program, you can get a 0.5% participation credit for every 1% performed by the protege on that city contract, up to 5%. And you can apply for this program by either as the prime yourself agreeing to mentor an MBE or WBE, or if you have a subcontractor who you would think fits this program, your subcontractor can also commit to mentoring the MBE or WBE. And in addition to being able to get the MBE and WBE credits that we discussed earlier, if you are eligible for this program, the prime can also receive a 1% bid incentive on their bid solicitation. Then we have our target market program, and this program is designed to give more opportunities for MBEs and WBEs to gain city contracts. And on target market contracts, MBEs and WBEs will be the only ones who are eligible to bid on those contracts. You'll know it's a target market contract because it will indicate it on the cover page of the contract and in the special conditions for MBE and WBEs, which is typically our Article 6 in contracts. And if you're a bidder, you can either be individually an MBE or WBE, or you can be a joint venture that consists of MBEs and WBEs. But if you do apply as a joint venture, just keep in mind that the members of the joint venture all need to be either MBEs or WBEs. Having one MBE or WBE in the joint venture will not make you eligible for target market contracts. And you do need to be certified as that MBE or WBE before you submit your bid. If you do hold a target market contract, one other thing to keep in mind is that the prime contractor can subcontract out up to 50% of the dollar value of the contract to non-MBEs and WBEs, but 50% of the contract does need to be performed by MBEs or WBEs, and that can either be at the prime level or the subcontracting level. And then our final city program is the MBE WBE phased graduation program. And this program is designed to maximize diversity in cities contracting by making established businesses eligible to continue to participate in the city's MBE and WBE program for 3 additional years after becoming an established business. So as an MBE or WBE, if you are already certified and then you end up no longer being eligible to be certified as an MBE or WBE, either because you exceeded the gross receipts limit, the employee size limits, or you exceeded the personal net worth limits, you'd then be considered an established business instead of a certified firm. However, under this program, there would be 3 years in which you could be considered a participating established business and still participate in the MBE WBE program. It will just be for reduced credits amounts. So in your first year as a participating established business, you would be eligible for a 75% credit for participation in city contracts. So this would mean for every dollar that is paid to the firm, the prime contractor could be credited for 75% or 75 cents participation for that dollar. And then that would decrease each year. So it would go down to 50% credit during the second year and a 25% credit during the third year. And that wraps the city's programs. So we'll move on to talking about the city's bid incentives. And the city has a number of different incentives, which are all on the screen. We'll give a brief overview of each of these, and we'll start with discussions on bid incentives that are only available under our construction contracts. Then we'll discuss the one bid incentive the city has that is only available on non-construction contracts. And finally, we'll finish talking about incentives that are available on both construction and non-construction contracts.
Before discussing each incentive, excuse me, we'll just discuss how incentives work. So when you receive your bid solicitation, one thing you'll want to look for is which incentives are available under that contract. There'll be both information describing the legal terms and conditions that govern the bid incentive, and then there'll be a set of affidavits available that correspond with each available incentive. So you'll want to start by reading the terms and conditions so you understand how that incentive applies, and then you'll want to look for the corresponding affidavit if you believe you are eligible for a specific bid incentive. You'll want to review that affidavit carefully, complete it, and then make sure you look for any other documentation that the affidavit indicates needs to be submitted to be eligible for that incentive in addition to the affidavit, and you want to make sure that you submit that documentation as well. When you're submitting your bid, if you fail to complete the affidavit or provide those documents that are requested in the affidavit, you won't be considered for the incentive. So definitely want to make sure you carefully read that, because if you are eligible for certain bid incentives, purely for bid evaluation purposes, your bid will be reduced by the amount of the incentives. So it can help you receive city contracts, because for our low bid contracts, we award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. So low price is the controlling factor. And each incentive we'll talk about today, each has a corresponding percentage with it. So if, for instance, you received a bid incentive that was a 4% bid incentive, your overall base bid would be reduced by 4% solely for evaluation purposes. So when you're compared against the other bidders, your bid will be lowered by 4%. However, if you are ultimately then deemed the lowest responsive and responsible bidder and awarded the contract, you'll still receive your full amount that you bid as your base bid. So it just helps you for evaluation purposes. And when you're looking at the different incentives, most of the incentives can be combined so that you can stack them, but there are a few to keep in mind that are not stackable, and you can only use one or the other. Those all appear on the screen here and are also available in the city's resource guide on the DPS website. If you look at the incentive resource guide, you will find this same table that will indicate the few that cannot be combined, and the few that can't be combined are just based on having similar criteria. So it keeps you from double dipping and benefiting from the same thing and getting to use it twice for incentives. To qualify for the incentives, most of what you will do will occur when you're applying for the bid in terms of the documents you need to submit, and that will be the affidavit and any additional documentation that the affidavit requires. However, for some of our incentives, especially our future bid incentives, you might be required to submit documentation throughout the performance of the contract or at contract closeout that shows that you met the commitments that you said you would meet in the affidavit you submitted. And if you do fail to meet the commitments that were laid out under the bid incentive you received, there are some penalties for that can range from having fines up to 3 times the amount of the incentive granted. If it's a future bid incentive, you can be denied earned credit from that incentive, or you might be found non-responsible on a future contract. So when you do make commitments, you do want to just make sure that you're only committing to things that you think you can meet under the contract. And now we'll go into the different individual bid incentives. The first ones we'll discuss are only available under construction contracts. And the first of those is the apprentice utilization bid incentive. And this is a future bid incentive. And when I say future bid incentive, that just means that this is one where you will earn credit to use on a future contract. So if you are just initially applying for this incentive, saying you'll use apprentices on the contract, you won't get a reduction
for bid evaluation purposes on this contract, but if you actually do end up using the apprentices as you committed to at the start of the contract, you'll earn credit for a future contract. So this particular bid incentive is designed to encourage city prime contractors to utilize apprentices on construction projects that have an estimated value of $100,000 or more. And for purposes of this incentive, apprentice means any person who is sponsored into an apprentice training program by a contractor who is authorized by a union to sponsor apprentices. And also, the apprentice needs to be enrolled in or graduated from a construction technology training program that's administered by city colleges, or alternatively, has graduated from a high school operated by CPS. If those conditions are met, you can earn either a 0.5% or a 1% bid incentive, depending on how much you've utilized apprentices under the contract. And you get that as a future credit, as I mentioned, to use on a future contract. So if you do get that future credit, you'll get an earned credit certificate that you'll be awarded, and any bids that you submit a bid on, you can indicate that you have that earned credit. You would attach your earned credit certificate, and then if you are awarded the contract, you will ultimately get to have that bid incentive you earn applied to the contract. You can indicate on multiple bids that you have the credit available. However, you will only ultimately be able to use it once. So whichever contract is awarded first, if you submitted multiple bids at the same time, all indicating that you have the incentive available, that's the bid that the incentive will be applied to. And any credit you earn with this incentive will be valid for 3 years. Closely related to the apprentice bid incentive, we have our returning resident apprentice bid incentive. And this is designed for city prime contractors to sponsor and utilize returning resident apprentices on construction projects that have an estimated value of $100,000 or more. In this incentive, DFSS will work with delegate agencies to recruit, screen, and refer potentially qualified candidates for the program. And all candidates for it do go through an initial intake process where their eligibility for the program is determined. And similar to the apprentice bid incentive, this is another tiered incentive where you will earn either a 0.5% or a 1% future bid incentive, where you get a credit that can be used for up to 3 years. And just like the apprentice bid incentive, you can indicate you have an incentive available on multiple contracts, but you can only ultimately use it to win one contract award. Then we have our equal employment opportunity bid incentive. And this is designed to increase utilization of minority and women journey workers, apprentices, and laborers on construction projects that have an estimated value of $100,000 or more. If you're familiar with the city's construction contracts, you'll likely know this more as what is reflected as the award criteria determination. So you will find in any construction contract a form that does say award criteria determination that lays out a specific canvassing formula. And you as the bidder will end up proposing the utilization levels you would like for minority and women workers for the work hours on the project. For purposes of this incentive, the commitment cap for female workers is 15% and the cap for minority workers is 70%. And it's important to keep in mind, you can certainly exceed those caps and the city encourages you to do so. It's just for purposes of the canvassing formula, that's the highest percentage that can be inserted into the formula. So bidders will ultimately be given 150% credit for every work hour that's performed by a minority or female worker that resides in a socioeconomically disadvantaged area. And after you do complete your calculations for this formula on the award criteria determination, the final calculation will be called the award criteria figure. And that is the numbers that bids will be compared amongst each other with, rather than comparing the base bid. Then we also have our project area subcontractor bid incentive.
This is another incentive available on construction projects. And this is available when prime contractors utilize project area subcontractors. And what's considered the project area for a particular contract will vary depending on the specification, but every specification for construction will show you what the project area is, and it will be defined based on where the work for that particular project is occurring. So you'll just want to look for what's considered the project area for any construction contract on which you're bidding. And to be eligible for this incentive, the subcontractor needs to be a small business based on the SBA size standards. They must conduct meaningful day-to-day business at a facility that's located in the project area, and that facility must be the place of employment for the majority of the regular full-time workforce. The subcontractor also needs to hold all required city licenses and is subject to city taxes. If you do meet these requirements, you are eligible for the project area subcontractor bid incentive. And this is another tiered incentive where you can earn either a 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, or 2% bid incentive, depending on how much work the project area subcontractor completes under the contract. And then we have the last of our construction only bid incentives, which is our veteran owned subcontractor utilization incentive. And this applies to contracts for construction and is designed to encourage using VBE subcontractors to perform the contract. So to be eligible for this, bidders need to utilize veteran owned small local businesses or VBEs as subcontractors. This is another tiered incentive that will be based on how much work the VBEs perform. And you can earn anywhere from 0.5% up to a 2% bid incentive. And that 2% incentive is available if you commit to having 50% or more of the work performed by a veteran-owned subcontractor. But if you have even anywhere from 1 to 16% of the work performed by the VBE, you can still earn a 0.5% bid incentive. The next incentive we have is the only incentive that the city offers that is available solely on non-construction contracts, and that is our city-based manufacturers bid incentive. And this incentive is designed to increase contracting and supply opportunities and participation by city-based manufacturers. To be eligible for this incentive, the manufacturer needs to be licensed, taxed, and operating in the city. And this is available on contracts that have an estimated value of $100,000 or more. This is also a tiered incentive, and it has a 1% to a 2% bid incentive available, depending on what percentage of goods provided under the contract are provided by city-based manufacturers. Now, our last few incentives that we cover are incentives available under both construction and non-construction contracts. So you will find this on any type of city-funded contract. The first of those is the alternatively powered vehicles bid incentive. And this incentive is designed for city vendors to use alternatively powered vehicles in their business fleet. To be eligible for this, the business needs to be located within the 6-county region. You need to have a fleet that consists of at least 10 vehicles, and that fleet also needs to be located within the 6-county region. And of that majority of the fleet, the majority of those vehicles also need to be alternatively powered. And what's considered alternatively powered has a broad range, but it includes, but is not limited to, natural gas, liquefied petroleum, hydrogen, ethanol E85, and electricity. And if you meet all of these requirements, you can earn a 0.5% bid incentive if you complete the affidavit required to be eligible for the incentive. Then the city also has its business enterprises owned or operated by people with disabilities incentive, or BEPD incentive. And this is designed to increase contracting opportunities for BEPDs. To be eligible for this incentive, the work that you
either perform needs to be done by a BEPD itself as the prime or a BEPD subcontractor. And to be eligible for that, you do need to be actually certified as a BEPD, which does require you to be 51% or more owned by a person with a disability. If you are eligible for this incentive, you can earn a 1%, 2%, 3%, or 4% bid incentive, depending on how much work you have performed under the contract by the BEPD. Then we have our city-based business bid incentive. This is one of the city's most heavily used bid incentives. And this is designed to increase contracting opportunities and participation by city-based businesses. This is available on contracts that have a value of $100,000 or more and is a tiered incentive. So if you're eligible for this incentive, you will receive whichever of the highest tiers you're eligible for, but you can only receive one of the tiers. These cannot be combined. So the first level is the 4% bid incentive, and you'd be eligible for this if the business is city-based, meaning that you conduct meaningful day-to-day business from a facility that's located in the city. A majority of that regular full-time employees workforce does need to work out of a city facility. The city business needs to hold all city licenses and will also be subject to applicable city taxes. If all those requirements are met, you'll be eligible for a 4% bid incentive. If you meet all of those requirements and a majority of your regular full-time workforce also are city residents, you'll be eligible for the next level of the incentive, which is the 6% bid incentive. And then if you meet all the requirements of the 6% bid incentive, and on top of that, a majority of the city residents workforce live in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas, then you'll actually be eligible for the 8% bid incentive. And what's considered socioeconomically disadvantaged is shown on this map. This is the city's current map. Everything in red indicates a socioeconomically disadvantaged area. And this map is generated by DPD. And as it's updated, it'll be updated on the city's website, and a copy of the map can be found at the link that appears on this slide. Another incentive available on certain city contracts is the bid incentive to encourage MBE and WBE participation. And this bid incentive will only appear if there are no MBE or WBE goals on the contract. So most city contracts you'll see will have MBE and WBE participation goals. However, sometimes the goals on those contracts will appear as 0 because of an insufficient number of certified firms available. When that occurs, this incentive is very often included in the solicitation. And for this incentive, if you're bidding, you essentially propose the percentage of MBEs and WBEs that you think will be able to participate in the contract. You'll need to submit the corresponding affidavit that's in the solicitation, as well as a compliance plan showing how you plan to use the MBEs and WBEs to be eligible for this. And you can have that MBE, WBE participation occur at either the prime or the subcontracting level. And that can be either direct or indirect participation. And then here we have just the chart of what you can earn in terms of the bid incentive. You can earn anywhere from a 0.75% up to a 2% bid incentive, depending on how you plan to utilize MBEs and WBEs under that contract. Then we also have our veteran-owned and small business joint venture bid incentive. This incentive is designed to increase contracting opportunities and participation by VBEs and eligible joint ventures that consist of one or more VBE. This incentive is available on contracts that are over $100,000 and is a 5% bid incentive. VBEs can apply for this incentive on their own. If you're a VBE, you do not need to be part of a joint venture to apply. But the VBEs do need to have 51% or more veteran ownership, and you do need to be certified by the city. However, if you are not yourself a VBE, joint ventures can also apply for this incentive. And if you are a joint venture applying for this incentive, you do need to meet the following requirements. Every member of the joint venture needs to be a small business enterprise, a VBE, or you can be both an SBE and a VBE. At least one member in the joint venture does need to be a VBE. All of the SPEs collectively have to have at least a 30% interest in the joint venture. Similarly, all of the veteran-owned businesses collectively need to hold a 30% interest in the joint venture. And the joint venture partners do need to self-perform at least 20% of the work under the contract if awarded the contract. Then finally, just no members of the joint venture can act as brokers. Then we have our final bid incentive, and that is our diverse workforce and management bid incentive. This is one of the largest incentives that is available under city contracts. It's designed to encourage contractors to employ both a diverse workforce and management. So this is available on contracts that have a value of $100,000 or more. And this has two tiers to it. One tier has to do with diverse workforce and one is for diverse management. These two tiers can be stacked. So for having a diverse workforce, you can earn a 2 to 6% bid incentive. That 6% incentive is available if over 40% of your workforce is diverse. And if you only meet the qualifications for the diverse workforce and do not meet the qualifications for the diverse management, you can still receive that 2, 4, or 6% incentive. But if you also have a diverse management, you can also apply for the diverse management piece of the incentive, which allows you to earn a 0.5, 2, or 4% incentive, depending on the percentage of your management force that is diverse. And similarly to the diverse workforce, if you do not meet the diverse workforce qualifications, but you do meet the qualifications for having a diverse management, you can apply solely for the diverse management portion. But if you can apply for both, you can earn up to the 10% credit for the bid incentive, since they can be combined under the contracts. And that is the last of our incentives. So with that, I will turn it back over to Jackie for any questions.
Thank you so much, Courtney. So if you have any questions, feel free to go to the Q&A panel in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and go ahead and type in your question. Or if you have no questions, we'll be ending the presentation. But before we do so, I will give a few extra minutes for anything that you may think that you might want to ask. Courtney, if you wouldn't mind, if you have any parting comments that you would give the participants about incentives and programs, any last reminders or key points that you want them to take away from this workshop, feel free to say it here.
And I think the biggest thing is we often have people not take advantage of our bid incentives on contracts. Just highly encourage you, if you're not very familiar with them, to make sure anytime you're bidding with the city that you do take a look through the different incentives that are available. We often have on our low bid contracts a very small difference between the lowest bidder who is awarded the contract and the second lowest bidder. Sometimes incentives are the difference between whether someone is the lowest or second lowest bidder. So they're definitely worth your time to look through and make sure you're applying for any that you are eligible for.
Good point. With that said, I would just say keep, if you're already getting our DPS alerts, keep getting the DPS alerts, and keep in mind on September 5th, we will be having our procurement symposium. So sign up for that as soon as you possibly can. And once this workshop has ended, automatically it will have a post survey. Feel free in the comments of the survey if you have suggestions of topics or items that you would like covered from the Department of Procurement Services. We would love to hear what those things are, so that we can kind of program going forward some of the great things that you might put in your comments. With that said, I guess there's no questions, and I do not see any at this time. We'll go ahead and end this session and thank our participants for coming. And I thank you, Courtney, for giving your presentation. And we hope to see you back here at another presentation real soon. We have these presentations every week on Wednesday and Thursday, for most of the month. And if not, seeing you at another presentation, we'll definitely hope to see you on September 5th at our procurement symposium. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Courtney.